All right, we're about to dive into a really fascinating part of the book of Leviticus, looking at God's festivals for a nation he had just set free. And I know what you might be thinking, a bunch of ancient rules, but this is so much more than that. It's really a blueprint for understanding God's heart and his incredible plan to turn a nation of slaves into a people who could be truly free. Okay, this verse right here, it's the key to everything we're going to talk about. It's his powerful declaration of identity. God is reminding them, hey, you were slaves, but I broke your yoke. I set you free, not just to survive, but to walk with your heads held high. This whole theme of freedom, it's the foundation for everything that comes next. So how do we wrap our minds around this? Well, think of it like this. The book of Exodus is all about their physical restoration, God literally rescuing Israel from slavery in Egypt. But Leviticus, it goes so much deeper. It's about spiritual restoration. See, it's not just about being free from bondage. It's about being free for something greater, a real restored relationship with God himself. Now, to really get why this spiritual restoration was so critical, we have to go way, way back to the beginning. The fellowship, that close relationship between humanity and God, it was broken with Adam and Eve. And that led to the state of alienation, of separation. This is the core problem that God sets out to solve. And this is what's just so beautiful about this book. Seriously, Leviticus isn't a list of harsh, random rules. It is God's compassionate, incredibly detailed plan to reach out to his estranged people and fix that broken relationship. It's a roadmap for mending what was lost and creating a pathway back to fellowship. Now, think about it. A holy God couldn't just have direct, face-to-face fellowship with a sinful people. The gap was just too wide. So God established a bridge. He appointed specific people to stand right in that gap, the priests. The priests, they acted as mediators. This is such a crucial concept. They represented the people to God, bringing their offerings and their prayers. But they also represented God to the people, communicating his laws and showing them his character. They were the essential go-betweens. And because they had this incredibly sacred role, the standards for priests were unbelievably high. I mean, just look at this level of detail. No physical defects, strict marriage rules, even rules on mourning. The high priest couldn't even mourn his own parents. Now, why so strict? It's because their very lives had to be a living picture of the perfection and the holiness of the God they represented. This verse gets right to the heart of it. God's name, his very character and reputation, had to be acknowledged as holy. The priests, through their blameless lives, were supposed to be a living demonstration of that holiness for the whole nation. So to break these rules wasn't just a mistake. It was seen as profaning God's holy name. So with the priests and the offerings setting up how to approach God, he then establishes a rhythm for the nation's life. And these weren't meant to be heavy duties. No, they were appointed festivals, a calendar of celebration that would shape their entire year around their new life of freedom and fellowship with him. You have to notice the ownership here. God says, "These are my appointed feasts." They belong to him. He's the one inviting his people into his calendar, into his joy. I mean, what a fundamental shift from a mindset of slavery to one of a celebrated relationship. So here's a crucial point. Worship and fellowship, they can't be separated. They're two sides of the same coin. The 5 offerings were about worship, honoring the existence and holiness of God. The 8 festivals were about fellowship, actually celebrating that restored relationship with him. See, you can't really have one without the other. Genuine worship always leads to genuine fellowship. So here's a quick look at what these festivals represented. Each one had a special meaning, weaving the story of God's character into the very fabric of their year. Think about it. The weekly Sabbath reminded them that free people rest. Passover celebrated their deliverance. Tabernacles helped them recall God's faithful care in the wilderness. It was this constant, beautiful cycle of remembrance and celebration. But all of these festivals were building towards something truly spectacular, an event that was the ultimate expression of God's heart for freedom and restoration, the year of Jubilee. This celebration happened on the 50th year. It came after 7 cycles of 7-year sabbatical years. So after 49 years, the 50th year was like a nationwide reset button, something the world has never seen before or since. And just look at what happened during Jubilee. It's wild. As you can see, all debts were just wiped clean. If a family had lost their ancestral land, it was given back to them. Any Israelite who had to sell themselves into servitude was set free. This was a radical, society-wide declaration that bondage, whether it was economic or personal, was never meant to be permanent for God's people.
So you might be asking, how was this even possible? Well, this verse reveals the core principle. The land, ultimately, didn't belong to the people. It belonged to God. They were simply stewards or tenants. And because God was the true owner, he had the authority to command this radical act of grace and completely reset the scales of justice. Okay, so with this incredible system of freedom and fellowship all laid out, God also presents a very clear choice. Following his commands would lead to blessings, security, and peace, but ignoring them, defying his ways, well, that would have severe, real-world consequences. This slide shows the tragic pattern of defiance that's described in Leviticus 26. And it wasn't just about one mistake. It was a downward spiral. Look at the progression here. After God's first warning, their response is to not listen. After the next, they close their ears. It just escalates until they become actively hostile, refusing any correction, which ultimately leads to devastation and exile. But even within all of this, there was still room for an individual's heart to respond. Chapter 27 shows us that even if the nation as a whole was failing, individuals who were grateful to God could still express their loyalty by making free will dedications, offerings that God didn't command, but that he graciously accepted. And as we wrap up, it's so important to remember the context, which this final verse makes crystal clear. These laws were given at a specific time, in a specific place, to a specific people, the nation of Israel, right there at Mount Sinai. They were part of a unique covenant made to prepare them and set them apart. So what's the big picture here? God didn't just break the chains of physical slavery. He gave his people a whole new way to live. He designed a society built on a rhythm of rest, celebration, and fellowship, teaching them day by day, week by week, and year by year what it really means to be a free people living under his loving care. And that leaves us with a question to really think about. If worship is honoring God for who he is, and fellowship is celebrating our restored relationship with him, how do our own lives, our own personal rhythms, reflect both of those amazing truths today?